let's jump into seven-figure copywriting. All right, this is where I bring up our resident seven-figure copywriter, Sky Richardson, the man with the plan. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
How we doing? I'm doing great. We've got, I think 85 is the high here in South Carolina today. So I'm enjoying the weather, and I'm going to try to get outside later.
All right, so let's move into seven-figure copywriting. Sky, we just looked at the subject lines. We want to give some people some great advice on how to think about subject lines in copywriting. So what do you got for us?
Yeah, I think the subject line is, I think a lot of times when advisors or anyone goes and writes an email, they write the email and then the subject line kind of gets slapped on in the last second. It's like, oh yeah, I got to write a subject line here before I hit the send button. And I think that's the wrong way to look at things, in the sense that the way I see the email subject line, whether you're sending it to prospects, whether they're cold, whether they're warm, whether you're sending it to current clients, it's kind of like the curb appeal to the house. Like if you're selling a house, you kind of got the curb appeal and what's going to make people come inside. And you can have the best house in the world on the inside, but if you've got this terrible curb appeal, you're not going to get as many people through the door to actually see what you have to offer them. And it's kind of the same thing with email, in the sense that almost all of the decisions someone's making on whether to open up an email that you're sending them is on that little subject line they see in their inbox. Now, granted, there's also some credibility if they recognize your name, and there's other factors in play, but to an extent, it's the emails, it's the subject line that people decide whether or not they're going to open up your email. And so to that aim, the number one goal of the subject line is just to get them to open the email. Like it's simple, but it also has some complexity to it. So I don't know if there's anything you'd add on that point there, Jeremiah, but it's just it's to get them to open it. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah. And think about this. The subject line is the headline for your email. Mm-hmm. Like if you don't nail the subject line, anything you do in the email is lost. And why don't we just talk about how we approach subject line testing here at Advisorist? Because I know you and I work daily on the quality of our content, the tonality that we use. We're always testing stuff. So how did we approach actually the promotion of this virtual advisor power? We did some announcements, right? And we actually tested. So you want to kind of share that with folks?
Yeah. So when we sent, we're always testing things on the back end and seeing what's working. And so actually for the promo for this power hour, we actually did a split test. And that's, for those of you who don't know, is where we basically take the email list we have and we split it down the middle, and we send one version to one group and we send another version to another group. So you were everyone in this power hour was in one of those two buckets. And so you might have gotten one subject line, while another advisor might have got another subject line. And we do that to kind of constantly play around with what's working, what's resonating, what seems to not work, what seems to work on, with this type of promo. And so we sent out two yesterday, and one of them, some of you might receive, was, I'll call it subject line one, was legally piggyback Ken Fisher's marketing stack, which is a little bit of a play on what we talked about last week, right? We talked about piggybacking in some of our copywriting if you were here last week. And that was the first subject line. So legally piggybacking Ken Fisher's marketing stack. And we chose that one because, a lot of you are familiar with Ken Fisher, obviously, Fisher Investments, massive name, billionaire. So it's a very specific play. And the second subject line is just a little bit different. It was Ken Fisher's 8-figure marketing and ellipses on a $20 budget. And so technically we're giving the same thing, but it's just a little bit different play on words. And I can kind of walk through, if you want, Jeremiah, why we constructed those the way we did, if you would like.
Yep.
I will tell you that the first subject line was actually our better performer, which kind of surprised me, Jeremiah. For some reason, I was thinking when we ran that out there that the 8-figure marketing on a $20 budget, something about that just kind of sounded to me like that was going to be the winner. And that's why we test, because the other one was the winner.
Yeah. And who wrote that one?
I think that was you. I think that was the master. I think that was the master.
Yeah, I wrote that one, but that wasn't the winner.
Yeah. Well, to me,
here's my thought on that, right? And I'm wondering if you guys want to chime in the comments, like, why do you think that one was not the winner? An 8-figure, and you know what? It's so funny. As I wrote it, I was like, I had like this voice, my copywriter voice inside of me was like, you know what? The believability was too great. So like, there's this sweet spot of believability. Of like, I'm sitting in my underwear making $4,000 a day at the kitchen table. Like, okay, that's believable. You know, like that was actually a famous ad that was run by a guy who later got indicted in the 1990s who was selling marketing programs. But I mean, people like, that's believable. It's so outrageous, but you can kind of figure, all right, sitting at a kitchen table, very visual, but an 8-figure plan that costs $20. I think what happened with that subject line is people are like, doesn't sound too believable. So nah, right? But what's interesting, the difference wasn't that huge. Like we're talking like a percentage point, right? It's not like, 7% to 30%. It was really a percentage point. So, give us you had something you wanted to walk through on that.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, it's not a massive difference, but it is interesting how you learn something every time you do that, right? And you can take those little pieces and the lessons you've learned. So kind of quickly, when I think about subject lines and really any kind of headline, like in a blog post or anything, but for the purpose of this discussion for subject lines, I like to think about it. One of the easy, memorable things that I've learned is that it's called the 4 U's framework. It's kind of a classic copywriting framework. And it basically just says that when you're writing an email, subject line, blog post headline, there's 4 elements that you want to consider. And the first one, and I'll preface this by saying you're not necessarily going to include all 4 of these in every single email subject line you write, because it's easy to overdo things and to overthink it and get too complex when you're really trying to keep it simple and you're trying to cut through the noise. So, but these are 4 elements to think about. And the first one is urgency. And I think the statistic you may know, Jeremy, I think it's like people receive 122 emails a day or something. I think professionals or, business people, and it's a lot of emails. So people are judging you real quickly, trying to decide whether to open it. So urgency is a play that, they're asking themselves subconsciously, why is it important that I pay attention to this right now? Why can't I push it to the back burner? I've got 40 unopened emails. Why is this one worthy of my time right now? Subconsciously, consciously, they're asking that. So we are in an industry, thankfully, where urgency can sell. I mean, life insurance is a very urgent matter. There's ways to communicate that. Retirement planning, the whole concept of time value of money and starting as soon as you can. There's urgency that can be played there.
So limited time, few spots left, like that kind of stuff. Scarcity.
Oh, yeah, exactly. FOMO is a big one too, to that, fear of missing out to that degree as well. So urgency would be the first U. Usefulness is the second one. How does this apply on a granular level to, why is it important to the reader? Which is why it's so important to understand your target audience and your niche, which we've been really harping on, is once you understand who your target audience is and who your niche is, who you're going after, you can get very granular, very specific so that the subject line actually resonates with them.
And I think that's a good usefulness, right? I think that's why, our subject lines perform very well. I'm always asking myself, okay, what can I give of value in my emails, right? That even if you don't want to click and you don't want to come, but there's something in the email that makes you be like, oh, okay, like it's I just want to add value no matter how I communicate, right? Like all of us at Advisors, we're always just trying to leave people in a better place, whether they work with us or not. So that's the way we approach emails. Even if you decide not to click and not to join and not to get something free or not to buy, fine. At least, we left you in a better spot. So I always think about the subject line like, can you download something? Can we give you a script? Is there a template that would help you? Is there a video you should watch? So things like that, like even writing the word download, video, like 2-minute video, things like that. Those are things that trigger like the usefulness trigger. And actually, we're going to talk about that when we look at the ads, when we analyze the Ken Fisher breakdown. But yeah, keep going with the last 2 U's and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. The third one is unique. And, how is this your prospect, you have to assume that your prospect has seen what you're going to tell them dozens, hundreds of times before. How are you going to make it unique? How are you going to spin it in a unique way? And we've talked a little bit about that with unique mechanisms before. I think data points and statistics are really helpful. And I think that draws the eye in, and that can make something that's an otherwise maybe a fairly recycled idea, can make it very unique and really laser focused on what they're looking for. And the fourth one, which I think they kind of just ran out of U's, honestly, because it's ultra specific. So they wanted to make it the 4 U's instead of the 3 U's and an S. Ultra specific just means people tend to believe things that are specific more than they do a generic statement, which is why you'll see like dollar amounts work well, specific time frames work well. And, we use that a little bit in our subject line on the one that the $20 budget, that's a very specific amount. There's the believability factor we talked about, but one of the reasons that we put that into play is because it's a very specific amount, that's a dollar amount, rather than just saying inexpensive or something. It gives them a framework to see that through.
So like even just talking, like one thing I would probably try next time is I would put $19 budget. Because actually the tool I'm going to talk about costs $19. Like I should have just did that. And, I've been saying for years, specificity converts, generalities tank. You guys want to write that down and give it to your writers or give it to your admin, whoever writes for you. Specificity converts. And the more exact you can be, that you can say through compliantly, of course, the higher your conversions are going to be always. All right. What's the last one?
That was 4.
Oh, so that was the last one. Okay.
Yeah. Urgent, useful, unique, and ultra specific. So that's just a good framework to think about. It's easy to remember. Again, you're probably not going to get all 4 in there. But I would recommend, if nothing else, it needs to be useful and unique. I think those are the 2 most important. Urgency can come into play and specificity can come into play, but definitely has to be useful and unique to the prospect.